Hey, Hound Dogs. I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins.
and welcome to On the Air with Power Squared. This episode of OAPS is called Bluey.
That's right.
And we're talking not about hound dogs this week, but
Healers
and
or Australian cattle.
there you go. So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about Bandit, Chili, Bingo, and Bluey from the series Bluey,
Yes.
which has been on the air now since, 2018?
Yeah.
And we recently, which we'll get to, attended the Big Bluey play.
Bluey's Big Play.
Sorry, yeah. At the, where was it we went?
Went to the Dolby Theater.
The Dolby Theater in Hollywood. And so,
We're wearing shirts, but
yeah.
We'll get to that, but
Yeah.
Sorry for the flashing lights at the beginning.
That's right, which are the asparagus ones,
Yes.
which was one of the few souvenirs we could get.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about Bluey.
Yes.
So, I'm going to say you and your brother brought Bluey into our lives.
Yes.
How did you guys hear about Bluey?
Okay, so for me, it kind of started with me, actually. A couple of years ago, I want to say. I forget if it was pre-pandemic, but I was seeing Facebook ads. Still use Facebook in 2023. I was seeing Facebook ads for Bluey, and I think they were sponsored ads. But anyway, I saw enough of them advertising that it was on Disney, that I got curious what it was exactly, partly because it's one of those things where like the art style is the first thing that draws you in.
Right.
It looked very unique, and I saw enough of those ads, and then I also started to see merch IRL. Like one time we went to a physical Amazon store. I saw Bluey stuff there.
Okay.
So eventually I got curious and decided to watch an episode, and then I was hooked.
How did you watch this episode?
Disney Plus.
Okay. And
It was in the U.S. In Australia it airs on the ABC, but here it's on Disney Junior and Disney Plus.
Okay. So that's how we watched it.
Yeah.
So you and your brother watched, I think, the entire run that's available.
Yeah.
Which is not all of it. And then you got your mom and I to watch it.
Yeah.
And we watched the entire run of what's available, and watched. It's kind of fun to watch. If you only have like 7 or 8 minutes to watch something, that's the perfect length for these. Now, these are geared towards what age group?
It's a preschool show.
All right.
However, it has been described as like a parenting show masquerading as a preschool show.
Well, if you've ever been a child or you've ever been a parent, you can identify with characters in this.
Yeah.
Because the parents are really flexible in this show. I know more than I would have been in that situation, but they do try to rein the kids in a little bit. But the kids have this very vivid imagination.
Yeah. It's, Bluey as a show emphasizes the importance of play in a child's development, because like children like to play to help, either because they just like to have fun, or play helps them process things that they've seen.
They also learn they seem to learn a lot of social skills as well. I mean, these are all, except for Muffin, very well-behaved children for the most part.
Yeah.
And they kind of, quickly learn and adapt, which not all kids do. I mean, this is obviously someone's written a script and this is how it worked out. But they learn life lessons pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, it's based on it was created by Joe Brum, and it's largely based on his experience as a parent. So he is also almost the sole writer of the show. Although, from my understanding, the people involved in the production also talk about their experiences with parenting.
Does he do all the writing of it?
Yeah, there are a handful of episodes where there's a co-writer, but those are few and far between. So he's pretty much the only writer.
Cranks them out pretty well. I would imagine, 7 minutes is probably, I would imagine you could kind of crank those out if you had to, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's enjoyable to watch. It's sort of after like some shows like we've watched, you kind of like go, oh, this is kind of a nice come down in some ways.
Yeah.
It in some ways it's not the same, but it's kind of like Flying Witch.
Yeah.
Which is another show you introduced us to.
Yeah.
Which is very kind of calming.
Yeah.
So after like My Hero Academia or something like that, it's where it's getting very intense. It's nice to have something that's kind of a wind down, if that makes sense.
What kept me watching Bluey was like the really very strong writing. It's the characters. The show in general is just like really wholesome. And unlike a lot of other, I guess you could say, unlike some other preschool shows, it depicts like good parenting.
Yes.
And then also,
or great parenting, I would say.
Yeah. And the animation is another factor. It's like actually really good. Even though it's rig-based animation, they hide that really well for the most part. There's all these like little touches that they didn't have to do, but because they did, it helps add a lot.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the characters. Obviously, the show is called Bluey for a reason, but but she is not the only main character. There's actually the four of them are kind of the main characters, really.
Yeah.
And so you've got Bandit. I like how they all have dog names. Like that would be, because they met some guy named Fido,
Yeah.
So Bandit's the dad, Chili's the mom, and then there's Bingo, which my stepbrothers actually had a dog named Bingo. So, and then there's Bluey. And I would imagine Bluey's called Bluey because, well, she's blue, but anyway.
She's a blue here.
Yeah. So, and there was sort of at the beginning, some people kind of thought it was a little boy instead of a little girl because she looks like her dad. I'm saying coloring is the dad, but it's a girl.
Later in the show, another character makes that mix up.
Well, yeah. Because you can make that. It's easy to do that because you're looking for like things to be alike, and Bingo has the same coloring as Chili, so you think, oh, Bluey must be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the case.
Yeah. You
can look like your dad and not be a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the pretty much all the characters are really well written. I think I would agree that Bandit as a dad is like pretty much the best dad on TV.
Yeah, to ever live, I guess. But even then, the girls aren't pleased with everything he does.
No.
And he's a little, I'll say, gruff around the edges.
Yeah.
He's not above smelling bad, and
like the parents are flawed, but they're not like. It's not flawed like in, let's say, an adult comedy,
right?
Where they're like super flawed, or it's not like something like Caillou or Peppa Pig, where the parents either aren't present or they just exist to cater to whatever whim the kids have. They're actually like people
involved. Yeah, it's kind of more realistic, I'll say, than say like Peanuts, where the parents are just wah 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 voice off camera. The parents are actually involved, the kids, and they're of the age where parents would be involved. And it's you know, and all the kids that they have friends with have parents, you know, and it's a little idealized. There's no divorced, you know, dogs in it or whatever, but they're
there was an implication that minor characters' parents are divorced.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm just saying, for the most part, it's kind of a little bit like I'll say a 50s American sitcom where everything's rosy and everything kind of works out and everything. But it's uniquely Australian.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about. Don't they talk about like seeing kangaroos, which is not something you'd see here.
Yeah.
And they have different, like the animals they have are like, he does a emu or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's besides.
Yeah, Sean the emu.
Yeah. As a character, I mean, that's something. I know that we have emus here on television, but that's not a character you think of. And as an American thing, that's very Australian.
Yeah.
And.
You also see ibises and.
Yeah, it's just there's things that they have that we don't have here.
I want to say, talking about like the parents, when they actually make mistakes, especially Bandit, but they actually like own up to their mistakes and try to make up for it.
Right.
And again, it's good that. It's really good that Bandit isn't like an idiot dad.
Right. No, it's.
I think we get kind of tired of that.
Right. Then that was the downside of American sitcoms in the 50s. Was the dad's usually an idiot.
Yeah.
Not involved with raising the kids. Is at the office now. He works from home and he's an archaeologist that works from home. Is a little odd, but he does go off for 6 weeks or whatever on a dig or something. So he does. And I guess you could do some research at home and stuff. It's a very, I mean, the parents are always present. At least one of them's always there.
Yeah. No, Chili, it's not, I don't think it's directly stated in the show, but it is stated like on the website. She works part-time in airport security.
Yeah, in case she has to go to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so it's also interesting to see like both parents working.
Right.
Which is kind of more realistic now.
Now, and then the school they attend, or at least Bluey attends.
Yeah.
Is the teaching is sort of you learn through play more than anything else, right?
Yeah, fosters creativity.
Right. Calypso.
Yeah, the teacher. I believe it's, I'm not going to say one way or another what kind of school it is because it's
it's
a little debatable, but realm of like Waldorf schooling.
Okay, and that's sort of where reading is not the primary function.
In that sort of schooling, you don't learn reading and writing until you're like 8 or something.
Right. Now, what is Okay, so there's those 4, and their antics spill out of the house into the neighborhood, and everybody's got to be sort of in on it in a way.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that would actually play out in real world, but who's the neighbor?
Well, one of the neighbor they interact with the most is Lucky's dad.
Lucky's dad. Yeah. And he has a real name, but Pat. But Lucky's dad gets drawn into a lot of these, I'll say, shenanigans, and he just kind of goes with it. And Bandit does stuff in public that you would be mortified to do, but he doesn't because.
One interesting thing is he actually sometimes gets embarrassed.
He should. Some of the stuff he does is.
Like in one episode when they're playing at the playground, he stops doing something because another dad is watching.
Yes. So besides Lucky's dad, then they have a neighbor that on bin night they talk to a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
I'm not gonna sound like an idiot, so I'm not gonna.
Okay. So, but anyway, and then they get out to the, it's kind of interesting too because their
other next door neighbor is Wendy, who's Judo's mom.
Right. Okay. Wendy's the one that gets involved in one of the shows, right? One of the episodes.
Yeah, in season 3, there are some where she gets more directly involved.
And then it's kind of interesting. There's the show called Cafe, I believe.
Yeah.
And when they you kind of see the difference between children making friends and adult making friends.
Yeah.
And Bluey, another kid, they play and they're friends, and they both drag their parents, their dads into it. Fido being the other dad.
Yeah.
Which I love that as a name. And it's not as easy for adults, or I'll say adult men, to become friends as it is for two 6-year-old girls.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that as they sort of have to have more, the little girls instantaneously become friends and want to go over to each other's houses, and the dad's like, well, a little slower on that. And that's realistic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's harder for adult men to make, I can only speak for men, but it's hard for adult men to necessarily make friends unless you're, working at the same place or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a realistic look at that kind of situation. I mean, it does have those kind of moments in it.
Yeah.
There's one character that is not very well behaved. Is it Muffin Cupcake?
Yeah, Muffin Cupcake Healer.
Yeah, one of their cousins.
Yeah.
She is what you expect, I guess, of kids to be like in some ways.
Yeah, there's another interesting thing about the show is we do actually see their extended family occasionally.
Yeah.
Like mostly Bandit's side of the family. And usually usually his mom or the family of his younger brother.
Right. Yeah, right. And then there's also I guess he talks about obviously he was raised in the 80s, because he's mentioning the 80s over and over again. And he talks, there's one whole episode where it's, I guess, Fairy Tale, where he talks about his relationship with his younger brother and how he was kind of a jerk to him.
Yeah.
Which all older brothers are jerks to their younger brother. It's just kind of as it works out. But if mine's watching. But that's he also brings it's sort of a life lesson for him, in there. So we watched all these episodes, and they had started having a play.
Yeah, stage play.
Right, and that started in Australia at the Queensland Performing Arts Centre.
Yeah.
In Brisbane, with I looked it up, 2021 or 2022 or something, during the pandemic.
Be 21.
21. And it's traveling the world at the moment, right?
Yeah, it's at least traveling the U.S.
Well, I'm sure it's in other places too. What's kind of interesting is it's the same. It's the voices from the show.
Yeah.
But not, obviously not the animated. Yeah, it's not the actors or but it's done pretty well.
Yeah, they use life-size puppets that are really well made.
Mm-hmm.
You do constantly see like the puppeteers, but it's not distracting.
No,
because they wear like light or dark, really light or dark green, so they blend in with the background better. And they act out and lip sync to the timing of the pre-recorded audio.
It's
so that makes it more impressive.
Right, and because of our second medicine viewpoint of this, you can see the stage, and it's sort of a slanted stage with kind of areas in the I don't know what you call stage settings, but there's places where the puppeteers can move where they're not necessarily being seen as much.
It was really cleverly done.
Right. And it's kind of a little bit like, it brings a lot of things from the show.
Yeah.
Obviously, but it's not a story. It's not a show storyline, but you can see it being a show storyline.
Yeah.
I can extend it.
Yeah, it's kind of like an original 50-minute episode.
Right.
40 to 50-minute episode. And that was also written by Joe Brum. And it also has original music by the show's composer. I forget his name off the top of my head.
That's fine. I'm sure he's watching going, it's my name. Okay, so yeah, and they bring in a lot of I think it would help if you'd, and obviously I think it wasn't sold out, I don't think, when we were there. It was the 4th or 5th performance, whatever.
Yeah.
But
it was close to sold out.
It was close. But it would also help to have, I think it would help to have seen the show.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was necessarily required that you have seen the show.
Not necessarily, but it does help.
It really enhance because they go into characters and bring out, what was it, Chattermax or whatever?
Yeah.
And they become the grannies and things that you would, that's from the show.
Yeah.
So it would help to have seen it. But I think a kid whose parents spent a lot of money on floor seats and they had the right view would probably still enjoy it to a certain degree.
Yes. Just been informed the composer is Geoff Bush.
Okay. So lawsuit settled.
Preempted.
Yes, right. We got you there. But it was oddly kind of effective. I mean, there's a little bit at the end where we're learning a little bit about Chili and her relationship with her sister, and at the end you kind of like, it was surprisingly. I didn't cry, but I kind of like teared up a little bit at the end.
Yeah, it got me too.
Yeah, it's very very sneakily effective, and I think that would help with adults enjoying it as well, because it does get it's a little emotional.
Yeah, and
I don't think 6-year-old kids probably don't care about that part, but
right. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about Bluey too, is the show itself also tackles like some sort of adult subjects, but it does it in a way that kids would understand, and it doesn't like talk down to anyone.
And
there's some, speaking as an adult, or I guess a childless adult, there are things in there that have a lot more feel like they have more significance to an adult.
Now, not being a childless adult, are you learning things watching the show that you think you could apply when you do have kids? Because someday you're going to give us grandkids, right? No pressure, but
I think I'm learning some about parenting from it.
Yeah.
Like Bandit and Chili aren't the worst models you could have.
No, and as I think you were alluding to a lot, there were childless adults at the show.
Yeah. There was a good mixture of like families with kids and then childless adults, so that kind of speaks to the broad appeal of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard about that being part of the appeal, and we actually saw it when there was people, had to get up so they could get past, and they were by themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't look like they were necessarily, expecting or anything.
I actually I've seen a couple of videos about Bluey. That was, of course, after I was already invested in it, but I wanted to see what other people thought about it. And one of them, they were both like really positive about it, and one of them was done by a teenager, and it was like I don't have kids yet, but this is already getting me to take notes about parenting.
Yeah, no, I think you want your kids to have you're lucky if they have a vivid imagination like Bingo and Bluey have.
Yeah.
And you want them to and it is interesting how they do learn through play, and they do seem to know a lot of kind of parts of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like they know what it's like to go to a doctor's office, but they don't know what it's like to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So when they play doctor, it's the receptionist and all that they got down, but being a doctor is like, you're fixed or whatever, which is like what a kid would have.
Yeah.
And the grannies, it's cute when they dress up as grannies. They call themselves Rita,
Janet and Rita.
And they kind of have this idea of what it's like to be old. I don't know where they got that from, because they show their grandmother, at least Bandit's mom, and she's not like a granny like that, but that's why they have this image in their head of grannies. And you know, they play games like, you know, it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And the play was fun to watch, and you know, again, we'd be wearing T-shirts if they had them available.
Yeah, but instead we got the seizure warning asparagus one.
Yeah, for some reason they had no shirts.
Oh, and we got a button set.
Right. They had no shirts other than extra small or
small and extra small.
Right, which was the guy who didn't have shirts was wearing one, but you know, anyway.
I'm sure everyone who works on it.
I guess. Sure. But I mean, you know, and they look like they would have had them, but I plan better, guys. Come on, bring your A game.
No, interestingly with Bluey, okay, so we also got the season 1 and 2 set, as I've held up a couple times already for those watching. This not only has bonus bits that you can also find on the official YouTube channel, but it also has the original Australian cuts of some of the episodes.
Yeah, because some of them got edited here.
Yeah.
And occasionally there's a word changed here and there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's very... Oh, getting blurry. For the most part, it's very Australian.
Yeah.
And the other... Occasionally they'll have an episode... we could probably go off on every episode, but there's one where they go camping and she meets...
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite episodes. Camping.
Yeah. And she meets a guy a dog that speaks French, right? And
Jean-Luc.
Yes, and they kind of communicate, and if you watch, you can watch it in French.
Yeah. On Disney Plus, at least, you can watch it in French with the with English subtitles.
Right.
And you can also his name in the French version, his name is Johnny, and he speaks English, so you can actually hear his side of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because that's also, you get an idea of being Bluey growing a little older, because there's a future kind of thing in it, and there's a little more maturity to her and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. It's a very good. That's a good episode. The one with the FaceTime.
Yeah, FaceTime.
Yeah, is
that's a really good one
because
there's so much going on there.
Yeah, and you see, you know, it's with phones running around, you see things in the background that you would always see in the phone, and they do a really good job of connecting it all together.
Yeah, so the whole time I was wondering, how did they board this?
So they do kind of go the extra mile sometimes on some of the shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you see it fall. Yeah. Muffin. Anyway. So, which is, we're doing something kind of unusual with Trophy Unlocked, is you reviewed
Bluey's Big Play.
Right. And that will be out on Saturday.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this later, you can just go to Trophy Unlocked and look for it.
Trophyunlocked.blogspot.com. Yeah, I based it off of our experience. I talked about the play, kind of tried to be objective about it. But of course, there's some subjectivity in reviews, and I also talked about how our personal experience factored into it, and it was interesting trying to review a play. I tried to be spoiler free.
So so it's one of the few non-movie game reviews on the blog.
Yeah, I also have House of Leaves, which we have talked about on the podcast.
Right, and it's and actually people are reading that recently. Just so you know.
Spoiler alert! I liked a third of the book.
But you have to read the review to find out which part,
which layer of the book.
Or you could watch this on. We have a YouTube where we talked about it as well.
Yeah,
so it's always there if you want to check it out.
Anyway.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about Bluey?
I guess otherwise I just really highly recommend Bluey.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for I'll say young and old alike.
Yeah. So you don't have to have kids to watch it. It's okay.
No. And you'll find yourself going, I wouldn't do that if I was a parent. But that's not here nor there.
Yeah.
It's a cute show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that covers it.
All right.
So if you're watching this on YouTube later and you like it, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on Bluey.
Right. If you've seen it or not.
Yeah.
So next week we're having a team meeting.
Yes.
Which means we're bringing Trevor and Julia into the show. And until then, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.